Military history is the study of armed conflict in the history of humanity, and its impact on the societies, cultures, and economies thereof, as well as the resulting changes to local and international relationships. Professional historians normally focus on military affairs that had a major impact on the societies involved as well as the aftermath of conflicts, while amateur historians and hobbyists often take a larger interest in the details of battles, equipment, and uniforms in use. The essential subjects of military history study are the causes of war, the social and cultural foundations, military doctrine on each side, the logistics, leadership, technology, strategy, and tactics used, and how these changed over time. On the other hand, just war theory explores the moral dimensions of warfare, and to better limit the destructive reality caused by war, seeks to establish a doctrine of military ethics. As an applied field, military history has been studied at academies and service schools because the military command seeks to not repeat past mistakes, and improve upon its current performance by instilling an ability in commanders to perceive historical parallels during a battle, so as to capitalize on the lessons learned from the past. When certifying military history instructors, the Combat Studies Institute emphasizes rote detail memorization and focuses on themes and context in relation to current and future conflict, using the motto "Past is prologue." The discipline of military history is dynamic, changing with development as much of the subject area as the societies and organizations that make use of it. The dynamic nature of the discipline of military history is largely due to the rapid change of military forces, and the art and science of managing them, as well as the frenetic pace of technological development that had taken place during the period known as the Industrial Revolution, and more recently in the nuclear and information ages. An important recent concept is the Revolution in Military Affairs, RMA, which attempts to explain how warfare has been shaped by emerging technologies, such as gunpowder. It highlights the short outbursts of rapid change followed by periods of relative stability. In terms of the history profession in major countries, military history is an orphan, despite its enormous popularity with the general public. William H. McNeill points out, "This branch of our discipline flourishes in an intellectual ghetto. The 144 books in question published in 1968 to 78 fall into two distinct classes: works aimed at a popular readership, written by journalists and men of letters outside academic circles, and professional work nearly always produced within the military establishment. The study of military history in universities remains seriously underdeveloped. Indeed, lack of interest in and disdain for military history probably constitute one of the strangest prejudices of the profession. In recent decades, university-level courses in military history remain popular. Often they use films to humanize the combat experience. For example, Eugene P. Askley, history professor at the University of Maine, has explored the advantages and problems of teaching a course of modern war and its images entirely through films. Students said they found the documentaries more valuable than the dramas. However, military historians are frustrated by their marginal status in major history departments. Academic historians concerned with military topics have their own scholarly organization, Society for Military History. Since 1937 it has published the Journal of Military History. Its 4 issues a year include scholarly articles, reviews of new books, and a bibliography of new publications and dissertations. The Society has 2,300 members, holds an annual convention, and gives out prizes for the best scholarship. Historiography is the study of the history and method of the discipline of history or the study of a specialized topic. In this case, military history with an eye to gaining an accurate assessment of conflicts using all available sources. For this reason, military history is periodist, creating overlaying boundaries of study and analysis in which descriptions of battles by leaders may be unreliable due to the inclination to minimize mention of failure and exaggerate success. Military historians use historiographical analysis in an effort to allow an unbiased, contemporary view of records. One military historian, Jeremy Black, outlined problems 21st-century military historians face as an inheritance of their predecessors, Eurocentricity, a technological bias, a focus on leading military powers and dominant military systems, the separation of land from sea and recently air conflicts, the focus on state-to-state conflict, a lack of focus on political tasking in how forces are used. If these challenges were not sufficient for military historians, the limits of method are complicated by the lack of records, either destroyed or never recorded due to their value as a military secret. Scholars still do not know the exact nature of Greek fire, for instance. Researching Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom, for example, have presented unique challenges to historians due to records that were destroyed to protect classified military information, among other reasons. Historians use their knowledge of government regulation and military organization, and employing a targeted and systematic research strategy to piece together war histories. Despite these limits, wars are some of the most studied and detailed periods of human history. Military historians have often compared organization, tactical and strategic ideas, leadership, and national support of the militaries of different nations. In the early 1980s, historian Jeffrey Kimball studied the influence of a historian's political position on current events on interpretive disagreement regarding the causes of 20th-century wars. He surveyed the ideological preferences of 109 active diplomatic historians in the United States as well as 54 active military historians. He finds that their current political views are moderately correlated with their historiographical interpretations. A clear position on the left-right continuum regarding capitalism was apparent in most cases. All groups agreed with the proposition: historically, Americans have tended to view questions of their national security in terms of such extremes as good versus evil. Though the socialists were split, the other groups agreed that miscalculation and/or misunderstanding of the situation had caused U.S. interventionism. Kimball reports that of historians in the field of diplomatic history, 7% are socialist, 19% are other, 53% are liberal, 11% are none and 10% conservative. Of military historians, 0% are socialist, 8% are other, 35% are liberal, 18% are none and 40% are conservative. Online resources. People interested in military history from all periods of time, and all subtopics, are increasingly turning to the internet for many more resources than are typically available in nearby libraries. Since 1993, one of the most popular sites, with over 4,000 members, subscriptions are free, has been HWAR, sponsored by the HNet network based at Michigan State University. HWAR has 6 co-editors, and an academic advisory board that sets policy. It sponsors daily moderated discussions of current topics, announcements of new publications and conferences, and reports on developments at conferences. The HNet family of lists has sponsored and published over 46,000 scholarly book reviews, thousands of which deal with books in military history broadly conceived. Wikipedia itself has a very wide coverage of military history, with over 180,000 articles. Military museums specialize in military histories. They are often organized from a national point of view, where a museum in a particular country will have displays organized around conflicts in which that country has taken part. They typically take a broad view of warfare's role in the nation's history. They typically include displays of weapons and other military equipment, uniforms, wartime propaganda, and exhibits on civilian life during wartime, and decorations, among others. A military museum may be dedicated to a particular or area, such as the Imperial War Museum Duxford for military aircraft, Deutsches Panzermuseum for tanks, the Lang Max Museum for the Western Front, World War I, the International Spy Museum for espionage, the National World War I Museum for World War I, the D-Day Paratroopers Historical Center, Normandy, for World War II Airborne, or more generalist, such as the Canadian War Museum or the Musée de l'Armée. For the Italian Alpine Wall, one can find the most popular museum of bunkers in the small Museum N8 bunker at Olang/Kronplatz in the herd of the Dolomites of South Tyrol. The U.S. Army and the state National Guards operate 98 military history museums across the United States and 3 abroad. Curators debate how or whether the goal of providing diverse representations of war, in terms of positive and negative aspects of warfare. War is seldom presented as a good thing, but soldiers are heavily praised. David Lowenthal has observed that in today's museums, nothing seems too horrendous to commemorate. Yet as Andrew Whitmarsh notes, museums frequently portray a sanitized version of warfare. The actual bomber that dropped the atomic bomb on Japan became the focus of an angry national controversy, with veterans attacking curators and historians when the Smithsonian Institution planned to put its fuselage on public display in 1995. The uproar led to cancellation of the exhibit. The military revolution is a conceptual schema for explaining the transformation of European military strategy, tactics, and technology in the early modern period. The argument is that dramatic advances in technology, government finance, and public administration transformed and modernized European armies, tactics, and logistics. Since warfare was so central to the European state, the transformation had a major impact on modernizing government bureaucracies, taxation, and the national economy. The concept was introduced by Michael Roberts in the 1950s as he focused on Sweden 1560 to 1660. Roberts emphasized the introduction of muskets that could not be aimed at small targets, but could be very effective when fired in volleys by 3 ranks of infantry soldiers, with one firing while the other 2 ranks reloaded. All 3 ranks march forward to demolish the enemy. The infantry now had the firepower that had been reserved to the artillery, and had mobility that could rapidly advance in the battlefield, which the artillery lacked. The infantry thereby surpassed the artillery in tactical maneuvering on the battlefield. Roberts linked these advances with larger historical consequences, arguing that innovations in tactics, drill and doctrine by the Dutch and Swedes 1560 to 1660 led to a need for more and better trained troops and thus for permanent forces, standing armies. Armies grew much larger and more expensive. These changes in turn had major political consequences in the level of administrative support and the supply of money, men, and provisions, producing new financial demands and the creation of new governmental institutions. Thus, argued Roberts, the modern art of war made possible and necessary the creation of the modern state. In the 1990s the concept was modified and extended by Jeffrey Parker, who argued that developments in fortification and siege warfare caused the revolution. The concept of a military revolution based upon technology has given way to models based more on a slow evolution in which technology plays a minor role to organization, command and control, logistics and in general non-material improvements. The revolutionary nature of these changes was only visible after a long evolution that handed Europe a predominant place in warfare, a place that the Industrial Revolution would confirm. The concept of a military revolution in the 16th and 17th centuries has received a mixed reception among historians. Noted military historians Michael Duffy and Jeremy Black have strongly criticized it as misleading, exaggerated, and simplistic. As weapons, particularly small arms, became easier to use, countries began to abandon a complete reliance on professional soldiers in favor of conscription. Technological advances became increasingly important. While the armies of the previous period had usually had similar weapons, the industrial age saw encounters such as the Battle of Sadowa, in which possession of a more advanced technology played a decisive role in the outcome. Conscription was employed in industrial warfare to increase the number of military personnel that were available for combat. Conscription was notably used by Napoleon Bonaparte and the major parties during the 2 world wars. Total war was used in industrial warfare, the objective being to prevent the opposing nation to engage in war. Napoleon was the innovator. William Tecumseh Sherman's march to the sea and Philip Sheridan's burning of the Shenandoah Valley during the American Civil War were examples. On the largest scale, the strategic bombing of enemy cities and industrial factories during World War II was total warfare. Since the 1940s, preparation for a major war has been based on technological arms races involving all sorts of new weapons systems, such as nuclear and biological, as well as computerized control systems, and the opening of new venues, such as seen in the space race involving the United States, the Soviet Union, and more recently, China. Modern war also saw the improvement of armored tank technology. While tanks were present in the First World War and the Second World War, armored warfare technology came to a head with the start of the Cold War. Many of the technologies commonly seen on main battle tanks today, such as composite armor, high-caliber cannons, and advanced targeting systems, would be developed during this time. A distinctive feature since 1945 is the absence of wars between major powers, indeed the near absence of any traditional wars between established countries. The major exceptions were the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, the Iran-Iraq War 1980–1988, and the Gulf War of 1990–91. Instead, actual fighting has largely been a matter of civil wars and insurgencies. The most recent example of a war between two nation-states would be the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Thank you for watching this video.